there are three questions that I started asking myself that helps me to have a more expanded, bigger, and better life. And I want to share those with you today. If you're someone who feels like you live in a space where you feel like life could be better, or you feel like you're living in the same pattern of unfortunate events that you do not like, then I want to share these questions with you because they may be helpful to you. But I know that they were helpful for me. To give you some context behind that, my past came from someone who thought very much so in a victim mindset. I really thought in ways that limited me, kept me thinking limited. And I had experiences that kept me sad, or, that I felt inadequate, didn't feel good enough. And I would move through life that way, very insecure. And that brought on certain experiences in life that kept me repeating that type of emotion, this insecurity. But it was when I started asking bigger and more profound questions that my life opened. And so we're going to talk about those, and I'll give some context around what brought me to that question. But these are my questions. They were very personal to me. So let's just get started. The first question that I recall really asking myself, it really came around the time that I was heavily involved in church. I was married at this time, and I was very heavily in church. Now, I grew up being in church a bit, being there, but maybe not participating that much. But when I was at this particular church, it was a smaller church, and I had gotten much more involved in this church. And at the time that things were happening, this was around the time that Black Lives Matter was really on the rise, because there had been a lot of violence happening to particularly Black men, but also Black women, that brought Black Lives Matter to the forefront. So there were a lot of racial issues going on in the world at that time, in America at that time. And I remember being at church this particular day, and the pastor, who was a Black pastor, saying that, chanting what was this challenge against Black Lives Matter, which was all lives matter. And it really struck me in this way that it didn't quite feel comfortable. I wasn't comfortable enough to really challenge it at that time, but it left me feeling uneasy. And at that time, in the church that I was in, there was also issues with racial, I would say, separateness. There were different sections of conferences for this particular church that I was in, which was a Seventh-day Adventist church. And the different conferences seemed to be somewhat segregated by race. Sure, there would be some Black people in the churches that were predominantly white, and you might see a few races and alternate races in the churches that were predominantly Black. But for the most part, there was this clear division and separation. The other thing that was happening in this church was women weren't really allowed to speak in the pulpit in some churches, or there was still a lot of controversy around that. So for me, being in this church, I felt, first of all, like, as a woman, there's issues with me, what I'm able to do. As a Black person, this organization that's supposed to bring people together, you clearly see the divide. And then being at the church in the midst of some very heightened racial atrocities that are happening to people who look like me, a pastor that looks like me is chanting something about all lives matter. It was very uncomfortable to me. And again, I was not necessarily courageous enough at that time to challenge that pastor, but I remember going home and asking myself this particular question. And I asked it not in the context of religion. So I asked it to God, but even more the universe, to show me what African people were doing before chattel slavery, before being conquered by European influence. I wanted to know, did it look the same, and what was different? So this is the first question that I asked. And for me, this question brought about so much. So let me talk about that. First of all, when we ask a question, I really do think that answer comes back to us. My experience was, when I asked this question, I started getting answers that I had never gotten before. First of all, because I never asked the question. So this may mean that my mind was never even opened up to other possibilities. And one of the things the first thing that came to me was different people who were talking about ancient wisdom, ancient teachings, and one of them was in ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet. And when I started learning that information, it opened me up to a much vaster spiritual experience that made more sense to me. It really aligned with nature. It aligns with the natural processes of life. It aligns with principles that I have been able to learn about, study about, and not just learn and study, then apply to my life, which completely helped move me through a lot of my insecurities that I had, a lot of my self-doubt, which would cause me to not start anything, to think that I should only sit on the sidelines. This knowledge and these principles really helped me to start seeing life differently. It helps me to start seeing how I am a big part of the experiences that I have in this life, meaning that there is a power that I do have in the things that happen to me spiritually. There is a connecting with the divine that's in me and that I can connect with outside of me to create things in my life. So that's number one. To be completely honest, I asked, what was it that African people were doing before chattel slavery? And I wanted to know that. And that answer came to me through different historians, different people who were really respected in that area of knowledge. And it started me down the path to being able to do my own studying and my own research, and brought me to communities of people that have also been very helpful to continue that. And it's so interesting because I was in my I'm sure I was in my late 30s when I asked that question initially. And for all the years before that, I'd never heard of any kind of ancient spiritual practices. I had never heard of ancient Egypt. It was nothing that I had ever heard of. So I say this to say, when you ask a question and you are intently asking, answers will come to you. And so that brings me to the second question I recall myself asking that really helped to expand my experiences. So what I used to ask, well, let me just say what I asked. I asked, what are these things trying to teach me? And I'm sure at the time that I asked this question, I was dealing with a lot of relationships that challenged me because I had insecurities in my relationships. I was the type of person who tried to please a lot of people, who tried to get along with everyone, who tried to avoid conflict. And when you move in the world like that, you're first of all not being yourself. So you're acting, and that's exhausting. That takes a lot of effort. But you're doing that with an underlying sense of insecurity. And what I've come to learn through ancient wisdom is that what you really hold deep in you, despite what you're acting like on the outside, despite the mask that you put on, what you're really feeling about yourself deep down is what you're going to attract. And me performing to be likable, to be agreeable, deep down came from insecurity. So a lot of my relationships that I attracted were ones that just mirrored my insecurity. If it was that the people who came into my life were insecure, or the people in my life did things that continue to fester this insecurity in me through behaviors that maybe mirrored this idea that my self-belief of not being worthy, those were the things that I brought into my life through what I truly felt deep down. And so asking this question, what is this trying to teach me, was powerful, because what I used to ask myself is, why is this happening to me? Very victimized type of question. Why are they doing this to me? Why are they being this way to me? Why are they treating me like this? Why can't I get a break? And again, I have come to find and come to know that when you ask a question, you're going to get an answer based on how you ask the question. So if I'm asking, why is this happening to me? The question I'm going to get back is really around the frame of what I believe and what I'm in. So if I have a friend who is, let's say they are, not a true friend. Let's say it's a friend who's talking behind my back, and I find this out, and then I'm like, why is she doing this to me? Then the answer that comes back is really only going to be in the context of that. It might be, oh, she's jealous of you. Oh, she wants what you have. Oh, she, because she thinks that she's better than you. Whatever it is, it still kept me in the context of the question I was asking, if you get what I'm saying. It couldn't give me anything bigger. So it kept me in the mix of the drama. You ask a question only toward the drama or the event itself, as if it's hurting you, then it's just going to keep you in that box of answers. But when I ask the question, what is this trying to teach me? It takes the energy off of the people in the game. It takes the energy off of the people who are tied up in this situation you're having, and it takes it just to me. It has nothing to do with these people, really. It had to do with me. So if I want to know what was that experience trying to teach me, then it's going to take it back to me about what I am to learn about this experience. And so, for example, if it was a friend who I felt was talking behind my back, and I asked, well, what is this trying to teach me? It could be trying to teach me that there is a time to recognize people who aren't really there for you and to let those relationships go. It could be something that's saying that it's teaching me that my value is not based on what other people are thinking of me. And it's important for me to realign with what is really true about who I am. So it takes me away from giving these people power and just staying in the mix of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And it takes it back to what is it from this situation that can cause me to grow. Oftentimes when we are in the cattiness of gossip or someone talking or backstabbing, there could be this part that wants to play in that game, and it just becomes this back and forth. But when we really want to grow, we want to understand just about us. It could be, why would I be in a relationship where there's this back and forth, this backstabbing or this gossiping going on behind my back? What is going on for why I would be engaged in that type of relationship? Or, what are my next moves? Is this teaching me that I need to learn to love myself so that when I do that, some of these relationships will naturally fall away because vibrationally, they will no longer match who it is that you deem yourself to be, who it is that you see yourself as, vibrationally, how you see yourself. So that was a big part of my growth and having a larger expansion, a bigger expansion in life. The last question that I'm going to share with you today, that was a question that really began to open up my life to have better experiences and larger experiences, was what is the root cause to what it is that I'm feeling? And this was really big for me because I dealt again with a lot of shyness and insecurities, and oftentimes I would be left feeling inadequate. So I remember at a particular point when I was feeling really inadequate or self-conscious or not comfortable, or triggered by something, goes to some event, someone says something and it like really hit me in my gut, and I go home and I'm just like feeling bad about me. I had to really think about what was the root cause of that. And to ask the root cause of that, I had to also think of when was the first time I recalled feeling that way. And it took me back many years to younger years, childhood years, to see that there was some undealt with pain and experiences that I had lived as a young person. And when we don't address those things, when we don't begin to move through those things, we could honestly, as we go into our adult life, first of all, take those experiences with us, take that pain with us, but we get caught up in life and don't realize necessarily that we're still carrying that pain. But then we end up being easily triggered by things that bring that back up for us. So someone says something that reminds you of this way you see yourself based off of the things that happened when you were younger. And you can be triggered by those things. And sometimes you don't even realize it because you're just living life. You're thinking that these things happened so many years ago, this wouldn't be impacting me. But the truth is, oftentimes it does. And it really proves to the fact that time doesn't always heal. Really what heals is being able to acknowledge, address, and correct the thing. So if there's some part of you that you had a pain that you experienced way back when you were younger, and based off of that, you developed a belief about yourself, well, when you're an adult and you have experiences that poke at that belief, it hurts still. So it's important to be able to recognize that that's the root cause so that you can go back and start correcting that. Because anything that is causing you to feel like you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not important, you're not special, is all false. And it's important to recognize what caused it, but now how do you get to the point of creating the truth around that? To be able to recognize, well, someone or something came in and gave this experience when you were so young and trying to even learn how to process the world, that you began to believe something based off of limited ways of processing the world at that time or processing that experience. So now as an adult, we can go back and start dealing with that pain, recognizing that more than likely the person that put that pain on you had their own pain. And that is energetically someone passing their pain along, but you're able to always go back and correct, to redefine who you are, to put different perspective on that experience, to take the power away from that person or thing, because more than likely they were going through a thing that caused them to be that way in the first place. This isn't about embracing a person who's hurt you in any way, but it's recognizing that oftentimes when we're young and someone hurts us, they become a giant in our world. But when we go back and recognize, oh, this person was at home dealing with the things they were dealing with, or this person actually today is living this way because they were actually dealing with their own imperfections. It helps to shrink the person to not be so large in your experience and to put you back on the center stage of your life, and to then rewrite how it is that this person is being defined in your mind and in your heart. Because it is most important that you recognize who it is that you are in your mind and your heart. And when you have a knowing about that, then no one else's opinion or definition is going to be able to erase what you have created so solidly and so intentionally based off of a version of you that now has more awareness, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm sharing with you. These 3 questions, please let me know in the comments if one of these questions really sat with you more. My name is Crystal Turner. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner who is going holistic because I know to be whole is to be healed. Please like and subscribe to my channel as I continue to grow and want to reach more people for this soul work healing that we're doing here. Talk to you later. Bye.